The isolated head lives on for hours and reacts to external stimuli.
This is one of Sergei Brunkonenko's many dog experiments. Accomplished in the 1940s, he managed to detach a dog's head from its body and keep it alive with an artificial blood circulation system, one that replaced the heart and lungs. In 1950, Vladimir P. Demikov created the famous two-headed dogs, an experiment that would later inspire a head transplantation with monkeys by Dr. Robert White.
We took the B head off, and we took the A head and sewed it on the B body. Now you had the head but the brain, and that brain was now supplied, totally supplied, by the body of the new animal.
The procedure was a success to some extent, with the animal being able to smell, taste, hear, and see the world around it. The operation involved cauterizing arteries and veins carefully while the head was being severed to prevent hypovolemia. The animal survived for some time after the operation, even at times attempting to bite some of the staff. And in 2001, Dr. White successfully repeated the operation. Now jump to 2015, and Dr. Sergio Canavero plans to perform the first human head transplant by 2017. No human is known to have undergone the procedure. The most difficult process is removing the head. But why? Once an organ gets removed from the body, it begins to die. In heart or kidney transplants, doctors cool the organ to keep it viable. Cooling the organ helps reduce the amount of energy its cells need to stay alive. Doctors accomplish this by bathing the organ in a solution of cold salt water. This preserves kidneys for 48 hours, livers for 24 hours, and hearts for about 5 to 10 hours. But the brain is one of the most complex parts of the body. It houses our eyes, ears, nose, mouth, skin, and 2 separate gland systems. When the brain is removed, blood pressure in the head drops dramatically. Loss of fresh blood and oxygen pushes the brain into a coma, shortly followed by death. And then there's the spine.
Well, first off, Shep, the patient is matched with the donor for height and build. Then the head of the patient and the body of the donor are then cooled down to extend the time that their cells can survive without oxygen. The tissue around the necks are dissected and the major blood vessels are linked, kind of using tiny tubes. The biggest problem is fusing the spinal cord. If you come back, I can show you. They describe it as 2 bundles of spaghetti, your spinal cord, in the same way that hot water makes spaghetti stick together. They use chemicals to make sure the membranes mesh. Now, finally, the muscles and the blood supply are stitched together, and the patient is kept in a coma for 3 to 4 weeks so the spinal cord can then be stimulated. The doctor behind the study thinks we're only a few years away, but as you said, Chef, many are very, very skeptical.
So some huge ethical concerns here, Trace.
If Dr. Canavero succeeds in transplanting a head, the ethical concerns might outweigh the advantages.
Our scientists have done things which nobody's ever done before.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
But how will we as a society accept the concept that a human brain transplantation involves transplanting the mind and spirit?
The fact is, heads are not just simply brains in a container. If you rewire that up to a new body, it's going to change your personality, change how you think, change the chemistry of your brain. It's not going to be you anymore.
However, according to Dr. White, the personality and soul can be transferred in the process.
In the monkey experiments, these animals are as much a monkey as they were when they were in their own original body. So I would presume, and I'd go beyond that, I would be assured that the monkey personality is retained. So consciousness can be transplanted. Obviously, personality, if you want to speak of the monkey having personality, can be transferred. And so you might ask, where did this bring us as far as the human spirit or soul goes? And I guess you could argue it can be transplanted.
The question boils down to whether or not we will be the same with a new body. But for Valery Spiridonov, it's his only hope.
Valery Spiridonov was born with a rare genetic muscle wasting condition. People with this illness usually don't live for more than 20 years. But not only is Valery 30 years old now, he managed to get a higher education and works as a computer scientist for an IT company. But the biggest challenge of his life is still ahead. Valery is aiming to become the first human to undergo a body transplant surgery, attaching his head to a different body. He says his condition gets worse every year and getting a new body is the only solution, even though there's a big chance he won't survive.
The cost of the procedure will be upwards of $10 million and require hundreds of medical professionals. The first candidates for the procedure will be people like Valerie, those who have been paralyzed from the neck down. If successful, it can potentially increase life expectancy by 20 to 30 years. The recipient body would be someone who has been declared brain dead. Such individuals already serve as multiple organ donors, so there should be no strikingly new ethical considerations for head transplantation. So, where does this leave us? Well, as of right now, head transplants are generally considered impossible. The blood loss and spinal cord connection are two major obstacles to surpass. Even if the surgery is successful, are we willing to acknowledge that the human brain is the physical repository of the soul, something this operation implies? These are the questions facing us as we go in reality, where Frankenstein went only in fiction. But in 2 years, we'll know for sure.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!